Going live. Are we live yet? I'm live. Okay, this is my very first time ever doing a live stream on YouTube, but it seems ridiculously simple. I mean, just using YouTube. I've done stuff with StreamYard and like other people handling the producing. This is me having a very good Saturday, having a very good time, in no small part because I got lucky at the annual Pulp Show in Toronto and got this nice Valentine adult fantasy edition of Beyond the Fields We Know. It's a collection of Lord Dunsany's literature, which I'll talk about him a bit more in a second when there's actually anybody in the chat. I'm doing this all for the benefit of you, the person watching the recording later, assuming you exist. Um, yeah, so this collection holds many things, including one of my absolute favorite things written by Lord Dunsany, The Gods of Pegana, which is like a whole myth cycle thing, I guess you could call it, or world building life. Oh, hello, there's somebody in the chat. Hello, Dark Summer Wind. Yeah, so I'm just talking, I'm going to repeat myself. Sorry, recording people. But anyway, yes, so I've got this lovely book today. It got me in a good mood, along with a whole bunch of other things like sun and my dog healing nicely from surgery. And I'm just having a good time, even if it's not, the hot, cool young person version of a Saturday night. And I just thought, you know what? I could wait until later in the week and schedule this reading and try and like maximize my promotion of it and tie it into my currently ongoing, sorry, my upcoming crowdfund for the first book I'm ever going to publish called Beating Hearts and Battle axes. There we go. But honestly, I'm going to be in mega efficient promo mode for the next while because of that. And I just thought, just what if I just go turn on the camera? What if I just go have a good time, see who shows up, fuck it. So yeah, fuck it. We're doing it live. There's an aged reference. Um, so yeah, looks like I can see there's some excitement on Blue Sky. We'll see if that translates to more people in the chat. Hello, King Cabernet. Wait, that's Kevin. I think yes, I think that's Kevin. I could be wrong. He'll let me know in the chat, I'm sure. Anyway, tonight's reading brought to you by Henderson's Best Amber Ale. We're not sponsoring Oliver. It's a weird tagline that they stress who they're not sponsoring, but here we are. Here we are. That's advertising for you. I still have a lot to learn. This is good stuff. Anyway, so yeah, I have this lovely, lovely, lovely new Valentine paperback that I'm very happy with, and you know what? It's actually in very good condition for something of this vintage. Not much in the way of markings along the spine. There's like a little bit up here. The pages are pretty nice and clean. There's no like foxing or whatever. Also, notice the lovely orange spray edges. Spray edges are one of my favorite things in classic paperbacks, and I really want to do as much as I can within the limits of money to apply those to my own books that I publish going forward. Um, so what I'm gonna do is I'm not gonna beat up and molest this thing while drinking and being the fool for y'all. What I'm gonna do is use this piece of crap, which I got which I got off of Amazon, and I just wanted the words. I had read it at Toronto's own Merrill collection and knew that it was not the easiest thing to find. Something as nice as say this sucker. So I just was like, whatever. I just want the words. I don't care, man. Trouble's a fake idea. And so I just got this thing, which, like, this. No offense to the person who assembled it, but they did not put their whole ass into the procedure. Massive font. There's a little bit of the illustrations that I loved. They're not present in the hardcover I found today. So okay, credit for including something of the illustrations, but they aren't plentiful and they aren't very good looking. And in fact, as I review them now, I'm realizing, hang on, these are not even the illustrations from the original like hardcover Gods of Pagana book. They are stock art, just stock art that have little, if anything, to do with anything. Just slammed into this motherfucker. Oh, hello, Bryn. Good to see you. Um, now Kevin will be assassinated by his enemies. That's unfortunate, but you know what? Maybe Kevin's had a good time. Maybe now, maybe he's had a good run. Maybe now's the time for his enemies to get something. Like be kind to your enemies, Kevin. Yeah. No, it's just stock photography. God damn it. So yeah, this is a bullshit little man of a book, but it has the words and they are accurate as far as I can tell. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this for my beat 'em up. Fuck it, read the actual thing. And what I'm going to do though is I'm going to start with this because it has nice little opening. Do, 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 do. Okay, so I'm going to read the short opening by. Oh wait, no, it's not that short. All right. Okay, I'm going to read us the relevant section of the introduction to Beyond the Fields We Know, Lord Dunsany, a collection assembled by good old Lynn Carter, an editor who had a huge impact on fantasy. He's a very mockable person, but yeah, he's a neat character, and I kind of find I warm up to him a little more as time passes. Certainly, I'm grateful to him for making this book happen. So yeah, all right. The introduction. By the way, who is Lord Dunsany? A man you can look up on Wikipedia, but in short, he was literally a British lord who preceded the main like pulp era of the like 20s, 30s, 40s. Doing most of his writing kind of in the Edwardian era. Although he kept going after that, but I think most of the works that like he's lauded for came about during the Edwardian era, maybe even the very tail end of the Victorian era. And yeah, he wrote a lot of really neat stuff. In general, I admire his work for its lyricism, its inventiveness, its humor, its pathos, and the fact that he can do an incredible amount of work in like literally 2 or 3 pages. Like the man writes incredibly short stuff. And one of the reasons I'm comfortable reading The Gods of Pegana tonight is because I suspect I will either finish it or get pretty close. It's 80 pages, but it's also just 80 pages with like lots of white space and pretty big font. So yeah, it's a series of little snippets, little tiny episodes strung together, telling essentially the building of a world. One could argue it is 80 pages of world building, but it's more than that. Don't worry. Um, Yes. How do you do is the person's username, and they were saying nice Saturday night. Wow, that's a confusing string of words, and I've only had one sip of beer, so, but I like it. Hello, how do you do? All right. Okay. So yeah, this is my messy introduction. Being a messy bitch tonight, I'm now going to read a little bit of that introduction to the collection that covers a bit about Gods of Pagana, and I'm going to pick up this jerk and beat him up while I read him. Um, okay. Yes. Okay. So, editor's note from Lynn Carter. When I said I drew from the, yeah, he's referring to his earlier pre-introduction. There's like two introductions to this book. Anyway, whatever. When I said I drew from those 8 great collections of Dunsany's short fantasies to assemble the book I called At the Edge of the World, which I own, by the way, great collection, I was guilty of a slight inaccuracy. Actually, I drew from the last 7 books only, and did not touch the first of them at all. It is The Gods of Pagana. I previously neglected this first collection because the tales in the Gods of Pagana are all interconnected and do not look their best when taken out of context. True. Indeed, they are almost too slight to be considered real stories at all. Perhaps they could more correctly be termed prose poems. Well, I mean, some of them literally are poems, so hey. At any rate, I used nothing from the Gods of Pagana in At the Edge of the World. The Gods of Pagana was the first book Lord Dunsany ever wrote, and I say he got off to a pretty good start. As he recounted the genesis of the book during the winter of 1903, when he was a young soldier and sportsman of just 25, he took a house in Seend, Seend, however you pronounce that, and divided his time about equally between grouse shooting, fox hunting, and speech making on the theme of tariff reform, as he was then briefly in politics. Did I mention he was literally a lord? Grouse hunting? Jesus. Up to this point in his life, although he was interested in books and poetry, he had been aware of no vocation in that direction. But before long, fate provided him with a stimulus. Blah, blah, blah. It goes on. We do not need to hear all of this. Um, but then we get to a point where Dunsany, blah, blah. Before long, Dunsany began to write down short pieces about some kingdoms he drew some maps of for fun, or rather about the gods whom these kingdoms worshipped. As Dunsany explained, and so I began to write. And so I began to write, guided then, as ever since, by 2 lights that do not seem very often to shine together, poetry and humor. And when my bits of writing were all gathered into a book, it began with the words, "There are in Pagana Mung and Sish and Kib, and the maker of all small gods, who is Mana Yud Shashai." By the early summer, the book was ready for printing, and I took it to a publisher who promised to publish it for me, though that promise was never kept. Hmm. Dunsany did not explain why that first publisher, who remains nameless, reneged on his promise. He decided to have another firm print the book at his own expense. Vanity printing, my God. But first, he desired suitable illustrations. He had drawn up some sketches for it himself, but as he put it, I had the sense to realize that far better illustrations might be found. 2 artists alone suggested themselves to him as possessing the kind of visual imagination. Okay, well, we'll get into this maybe later because you're not going to actually see any of this art. But ultimately, I will say he went with he considered Gustave Doré, which is another timeline that would be quite interesting, and ultimately went with Sidney H. Syme. Doré was dead, therefore Syme happily was very much alive, and What's War was willing. We talk a bit more about the illustrations, whatever 8 were commissioned ultimately. While Syme prepared his 8 illustrations for the Gods of Pegana, Dunsany became engaged on July 15th, 1904, at the Duchess of Northumberland's garden party, as you do, to Lady Beatrice Villiers. They were wed in the parish church of Middleton Stony, and Lord Northland was the best man. Northland was a fellow soldier. He had met Dunsany while both officers had served in the Coldstream Guards. The book now completed, Dunsany took it to Elkin Matthews in Vigo Street in London to be printed, and as I have mentioned earlier, he paid for the printing himself. He wryly recalled in his autobiography, I paid for the publication of my first book, but never since then have I spent a penny on anything I have written, believing that such things should make their own way in the world. Well, there we go. Self pub dialogue long before it became ever so popular. Elkin Matthews published The Gods of Pegana in the autumn of 1905. A second edition was published in London in 1911 by the Pegana Press, a suspicious name that suggests, to me at least, that Dunsany again footed the bill for a private printing. The Gods of Pegana had never been published anywhere in the world during the 62 years from that day to this, to the date of this publication here in 60, 69, 62, 73. Wow, I can count. Anyway, so yeah, 73. It never had an edition published in the United States. It is probably not really the rarest of Dunsany's books, of which there are at least 67 that I personally know of, and doubtless several more I have yet to encounter. For the honor of being the rarest of his works doubtless belongs to an obscure volume entitled Selections from the Writings of Lord Dunsany, published in Churchtown by the for the honor of being the rarest of his works doubtless belongs to an obscure volume entitled Selections from the Writings of Lord Dunsany, published in Churchtown by the Kuala Press, Cuala, if you want to try and find that, Cuala Press, Kuala, in 1912, with a preface by William Butler Yeats. But surely The Gods of Pegana is the one book most assiduously sought after by Dunsany enthusiasts. So we have brought back to print in this volume the complete text of Dunsany's first book, The Gods of Pegana. Lyndon Carter, LC. All right, and then it just begins, and as I say, the text is identical. It's just laid out much more pretty in a much nicer package. So, The Gods of Pegana. Any questions or comments before I get going? Hoot at me, holler at me, I dare you. Also, I see it says top chat, which is not all chat. It should be all chat. Let me see all the messages. My God. Okay. All right. Anyway, someone said cool lol Poppy. So thank you for that. And now, now we enter through the shabby back door of this hastily assembled POD thing that I don't know. I guess the person was just trying to preserve the words, I suppose, but because I can't imagine they were doing it for profit. This edition, such as it is, I don't know, it's ugly. It has table of contents. It has a schmidge about Lord Dunsany, whatever. We're not going to read that. And it has a preface, which is actually part of the book, but then it has an introduction. Is that how that goes in the other one? Is that how that goes in the other one? Yeah, it's just not labeled as such. Okay, whatever. So this seems to be broken up into segments a little differently at the beginning, but afterwards, the table of contents matches. So you know what? We'll take our chances. Okay. So, ding. Should I hold it in front of me like this? Should I hold it in front of me like this? Okay. You know what? I'm going to get the beer in position. I'm going to get it by the keyboard and the microphone, which I will punch as you do when you're very professional about this. Okay, folks, strap in for the dawn of a new universe. And by the way, there is prodigious usage of all caps for importance. I will do my best to enunciate that. Um, what style is it? Poppy, could you elaborate? Oh, the beer. I thought you were going to say this. I'm like, oh, it's poetic. This is Henderson's Best Amber Ale. Not actually sponsoring this live stream, but what if they were? Yeah, it's pretty tasty actually. I really like Henderson Brewing Co. I fell in love with them with a beer of theirs that came out years ago now, or at least I tried it years ago. It was called Lunchbox. It was kind of a blonde, I think, but that doesn't feel quite right. Anyway, totally recommend them. Henderson make good beer. Mm. And I have a preference for hair colors, so blonde, red, or brown, and this is of course red, amber, if you will. All right, so it is indeed yummy. Okay, let's assume this is a dynamic pose for the video. Let's just assume that. Yeah, in the mists before the beginning, fate and chance cast lots to decide whose the game should be, and he that won strode through the mists to Mana Yud Sushai and said, "Now make gods for me, for I have won the cast, and the game is to be mine." Who it was that won the cast, and whether it was fate or whether chance that went through the mists before the beginning to Mana Yud Sushai, none knoweth. That's me doing italics for y'all. All right, we continue what is essentially the introduction preface, whatever. Again, the person who laid this out. Anyway, before there stood gods upon Olympus, or ever Allah was Allah, had wrought and rested Mana Yud Sushai, always the name in caps. There are in Pegana Mung and Sish and Kib, and the maker of all small gods, who is Mana Yud Sushai. Moreover, we have a faith in Rune and Slid. We do. We do have a faith here in Rune and Slid. And it has been said of old that all things that have been were all pardon me, yeah. And it has been said of old that all things that have been were wrought by the small gods, excepting only Mana Yud Sushai, who made the gods and hath thereafter rested. And none may pray to Mana Yud Sushai, but only the gods whom he hath made. But at the last will Mana Yud Sushai forget to rest, and will make again new gods and other worlds, and will destroy the gods whom he hath made. And the gods and the worlds shall depart, and there shall only be only Mana Yud Sushai. All right, our first segment with a name that actually matches up to what we have in here, so I'm going to assume from that here on it's more or less official. Section is called, chapter, whatever, of Skarl the Drummer. When Mana Yud Sushai had made the gods and Skarl, Skarl made a drum and began to beat upon it that he might drum forever. Then, because he was weary after the making of the gods, and because of the drumming of Skarl, did Mana Yud Sushai grow drowsy and fall asleep. And there fell a hush upon the gods when they saw that Mana rested, and there was silence on Pegana, save for the drumming of Skarl. Skarl sitteth upon the mist before the feet of Mana Yud Sushai, above the gods of Pegana, and there he beateth his drum. Some say that the worlds and the suns are but the echoes of the drumming of Skarl, and others say that they be dreams that arise in the mind of Mana, because of the drumming of Skarl, as one may dream whose rest is troubled by sound of song. But none knoweth, for who hath heard the voice of Mana Yud Sushai, or who hath seen his drummer? Whether the season be winter, or whether it be summer, whether it be morning among the worlds, or whether it be night, Skarl still beateth his drum. For the purposes of the gods are not yet fulfilled. Sometimes the arm of Skarl grows weary, but still he beateth his drum, that the gods may do the work of the gods and the worlds go on. For if he cease for an instant, then Mana Yud Sushai will start awake, and there will be worlds nor gods no more. But when at last the arm of Skarl shall cease to beat his drum, silence shall startle Pegana like thunder in a cave, and Mana Yud Sushai shall cease to exist. Then shall Skarl put his drum upon his back and walk forth into the void beyond the worlds, because it is the end, and the work of Skarl is over. There may arise some other god whom Skarl may serve, or it may be that he shall perish, but to Skarl it shall matter not, for he shall have done the work of Skarl. Pretty straightforward. We shall be so hopeful as to do the work of our name. Next section. Of the making of the worlds. When Mana Yud Sushai had made the gods, there were only the gods, and they sat in the middle of time, for there was as much time before them as behind them, which having no end had neither a beginning. And Pegana was without heat or light or sound, save for the drumming of Skarl. Moreover, Pegana was the middle of all, and for there was below Pegana what there was above it, and there lay before it that which lay beyond. Then said the gods, making the signs of the gods, and speaking with their hands, lest the silence of Pegana should blush. Then said the gods to one another, speaking with their hands, let us make worlds to amuse ourselves while Mana rests. Let us make worlds and life and death and colors in the sky, only let us not break the silence upon Pegana. Then, raising their hands, each god according to his sign, they made the worlds and the suns and put light in the houses in the sky, out of the sky. Then said the gods, let us make one to seek and never to find out concerning the wherefore of the making of the gods. And they made by the lifting of their hands, each god according to his sign, the bright one, with the flaring tail, to seek from the end of the worlds to the end of them again, to return again after 100 years. Like, I love this. The gods are just like, let's just make some poor little fucker who can't figure out what's going on with us. Man, when thou seest the comet, know that another seeketh besides thee, nor ever findeth out. Then said the gods, still speaking with their hands, let there be now a watcher to regard. And they made the moon, with his face wrinkled with many mountains and worn with 1,000 valleys, to regard with pale eyes the games of the small gods, and to watch throughout the resting time of Mana Yu Shisai, to watch, to regard all things, and be silent. Then said the gods, let us make one to rest, one not to move among the moving, one not to seek like the comet, nor to go round like the worlds, to rest while Mana rests. And they made the star of the abiding, and set it in the north. Man, when thou seest the star of the abiding to the north, know that one resteth as doth Mana Yu Tsashai, and know that somewhere among the worlds is rest. Lastly, the gods said, we have made worlds and suns, and one to seek and another to regard. Let us now make one to wonder. And they made earth to wonder, each god by the uplifting of his hand according to his sign. And earth was. All right. So we're making some things. We're learning the gods are big hand talkers. Fair enough. We move on to the next section. Of the game of the gods. 1,000,000 years passed over the first game of the gods, and Mana Yud Sashai still rested, still in the middle of time, and the gods still played with worlds. The moon regarded, and the bright one sought, and returned again to his seeking. Then Kib grew weary of the first game of the gods, and raised his hand to Pegana, making the sign of Kib, and earth became covered with beasts for Kib to play with. And Kib played with beasts. But the other gods said to one another, speaking with their hands, what is it that Kib has done? And they said to Kib, what are these things that move upon the earth, yet move not in circles like the worlds that regard like the moon, and yet they do not shine? And Kib said, this is life. But the gods said one to another, if Kib has thus made beasts, he will in time make men, and will endanger the secret of the gods. And Mung, I love Mung. We'll get to more Mung further in this. And Mung was jealous of the word of Kib, pardon me, the work of Kib, and sent down death among the beasts, but could not stamp them out. 1,000,000 years passed over the second game of the gods, and still it was the middle of time. And Kib grew weary of the second game, and raised his hand in the middle of all, making the sign of Kib, and made men. Out of beasts he made them, and earth was covered with men. Then the gods feared greatly for the secret of the gods, and set a veil between man and his ignorance, that he might not understand. And Mung was busy among men. That wordplay is intentional. And Mung was busy among men. But when the other gods saw Kib playing his new game, they came and played it too. And this they will play until Mana arises to rebuke them, saying, what do ye playing with worlds and suns, and men and life and death? And they shall be ashamed of their playing in the hour of the laughter of Mana Yu Shisai. It was Kib who first broke the silence of Pegana, by speaking with his mouth like a man. And all the other gods were angry with Kib, that he had spoken with his mouth. And there was no longer silence in Pegana, or the worlds. Plot twist. This brings next new section. The chaunt of the gods. That's chaunt. The chaunt. The chaunt? Let's go with chaunt. There came the voice of the gods singing the chaunt of the gods, singing, "We are the gods, we are the little games of Mana Yuz Shasai that he hath played and hath forgotten. Mana Yuz Mana Yuz Sushai. I've said it enough times. Christ. Mana Yuz Sushai hath made us, and we made the worlds and the suns, and we play with the worlds and the sun, and life and death until Mana arises to rebuke us, saying, What do ye playing with worlds and suns? It is a very serious thing that there be worlds and suns, and yet most withering is the laughter of Mana Yud Shashai. And when he arises from resting at the last, and laughs at us for playing with worlds and suns, we will hastily put them behind us, and there shall be worlds no more. The sayings of Kib, sender of life in all the worlds. Kib said, I am Kib. I am none other than Kib. Kib is Kib. Kib is he and no other. Believe! Kib said, when time was early, when time was very early indeed, there was only mana used to shy. Man, we get it, buddy. There was only mana used to shy. Mana used to shy was before the beginning of the gods and shall be after their going. And Kib said, after the going of the gods, there will be no small worlds nor big. Kib said, it will be lonely for mana used to shy, because this is written, believe, for it is not written. Or are you greater than Kib? Kib. Kib. All right. Yes, Poppy. I also enjoy creation myths, and this is quite a hoot. It escalates and builds upon itself nicely. Let's keep going. All right. New section. Concerning Sish, the destroyer of hours. Time is the hound of Sish. At Sish's bidding do the hours run before him as he goeth upon his way. Never hath Sish stepped backward, nor ever hath he tarried. Never hath he relented to the things that once he knew, nor turned to them again. Before Sish is Kib, and behind him goeth Mung. But behind him, pardon me, very pleasant are all things before the face of Sish, and behind him they are withered and old. And Sish goeth ceaselessly upon his way. Once the gods walked upon earth as men walk, and spake with their mouths like men. That was in Warnoth Mavai. They walk not now. And Warnoth Mavai was a garden fairer than all the gardens upon earth. Kib was propitious, and Mung raised not his hand against it, neither did Sish assail it with his hours. Warnoth Mavai lieth in a valley and looketh towards the south, and on the slopes of it Sith rested among the flowers when Sish was young. Thence Sish went forth into the world to destroy its cities, and to provoke his hours to assail all things, and to batter against them with the rust and with the dust. And time, which is the hound of Sish, devoured all things. And Sish sent up the ivy and fostered weeds, and dust fell from the hand of Sish, and covered stately things. Only the valley where Sish rested when he and time were young did Sish not provoke his hours to assail. There he restrained his old hound Time, and at the borders Mung withheld his footsteps. Warnath Mavai still lieth looking towards the south, a garden among gardens, and still the flowers grow about its slopes as they grew when the gods were young, and even the butterflies live in Warnoth Mavai still. For the minds of the gods relent towards their earliest memories, who relent not otherwise at all. Warnoth Mavai still lieth looking towards the south, but if thou shouldest ever find it, thou art then more fortunate than the gods, because they walk not in Warnoth Mavai now. Once did the prophet think that he discerned it in the distance beyond mountains, a garden exceeding fair with flowers, but Sish arose and pointed with his hand and set his hound to pursue him, who hath followed him ever since. Time is the hound of the gods, but it hath been said of old that he will one day turn upon his masters and seek to slay the gods, excepting only Mana Yud Sushai, whose dreams of the gods themselves dreamed long ago. I love that. I love time as the hound of the gods. All right, let's keep going. We move on to the sayings of Slid. And funny enough, actually, I just read a story about Slid in this book. It's a little beyond the actual Gods of Pagana. So I guess we have a greater Gods of Pagana cinematic universe that you can connect. Anyway, the sayings of Slid, whose soul is by the sea. Slid said, "Let no man pray to Mana Yud Sashai, for who shall trouble Mana with mortal woes, or irk him with the sorrows of all the houses of earth? Nor let any sacrifice to Mana Yud Sashai. For what glory shall he find in sacrifices or altars who hath made the gods themselves? Pray to the small gods, who are the gods of doing. But Mana is the god of having done, the god of having done, and of the resting. God of the weekend, maybe? Pray to the small gods and hope that they may hear thee. Yet what mercy should the small god have, who themselves make death and pain? Or shall they restrain their old hound time for thee? Slid is but a small god, yet Slid is Slid. It is written and hath been said. Pray thou therefore to Slid, and forget not Slid, and it may be that Slid will not forget to send thee death when most thou needest it. And the people of earth said, "There is a melody upon the earth, as though 10,000 streams all sang together for their homes that they had forsaken in the hills." And Slit said, "I am the Lord of gliding waters and of foaming waters and of still. I am the Lord of all the waters in the world, and all that long streams gather in the hills. But the soul of Slid is in the sea. Thither goes all that glides upon earth, and the end of all the rivers is the sea." And Slid said, "The hand of Slid hath toyed with cataracts, and down the valleys have trod the feet of Slid, and out of the lakes of the plains regard the eyes of Slid. But the soul of Slid is in the sea. Much homage hath Slid among the cities of men, and pleasant are the woodland paths, and the paths of the plains, and pleasant the high valleys, where he danceth in the hills. But Slid would be fettered neither by banks nor boundaries, so the soul of Slid is in the sea. For there may Slid repose beneath the sun, and smile at the gods above him with all the smiles of Slid, and be a happier god than those who sway the worlds, whose work is life and death. There may he sit and smile, or creep among the ships, or moan and sigh round islands in his great contempt, the miser lord of wealth in gems and pearls beyond the telling of all fables. Or there may he, when Slid would fain exult, throw up his great arms, or toss with many a fathom of wandering hair the mighty head of Slid, and cry aloud tumultuous dirges of shipwreck, and feel through all his being the crashing might of Slid, and sway the sea. Then doth the sea, like venturous legions on the eve of war that exult to acclaim their chief, gather its force together from under all the winds, and roar and follow and sing and crash together to vanquish all things, and all at the bidding of Slid, whose soul is in the sea. There is ease in the soul of Slid, and there be calm upon the sea. Also, there be storms upon the sea, and troubles in the soul of Slid, for the gods have many moods. And Slid is in many places, for he sitteth in high Pagana. Also along the valleys walketh Slid, wherever water moveth or lieth still, but the voice and the cry of Slid are from the sea. And to whoever that cry hath ever come, he must needs follow and follow, leaving all stable things, only to be always with Slid in all the moods of Slid, to find no rest until he reaches the sea. With the cry of Slid before them, and the hills of their home behind, have gone 100,000 to the sea, over whose bones doth Slid lament, with the voice of a god lamenting for his people. Even the streams from the inner lands have heard Slid's far off cry, and all together have forsaken lawns and trees, to follow where Slid is gathering up his own, to rejoice where Slid rejoices, singing the chaunt of Slid, even as will at the last gather all the lives of the people about the feet of Mana Yu Tsushai. Damn. All right. Keep people company while they clean. Fine thing to do with a creation myth. We move on to the next section. And hey, don't be quiet in that chat. Keep me company. All right. New section. The deeds of Mung, lord of all deaths between Bagana and the Rim. Once, as Mung went his way athwart the earth and up and down its cities and across its plains, Mung came upon a man who was afraid when Mung said, "I am Mung." And Mung said, "Were the 40 million years before they coming? before thy coming intolerable to thee? And Mung said, Not less tolerable to thee shall be the 40 million years to come. Then Mung made against him the sign of Mung. Here we go. And the life of the man was fettered no longer with hands and feet. At the end of the flight of the arrow there is Mung, and in the houses and the cities of men. Mung walketh in all places at all times, but mostly he loves to walk in the dark. And still, along the river mists, when the wind hath sank a little before night meeteth with the morning upon the highway between Pegana and the worlds. Sometimes Mung entereth the poor man's cottage. Mung also boweth very low before the king. Then do the lives of the poor man and of the king go forth among the worlds. And Mung said, Many turnings hath the road that Kib hath given every man to tread upon the earth. Behind one of these turnings sitteth Mung. One day, as a man trod upon the road that Kib had given him to tread, he came suddenly upon Mung. And when Mung said, I am Mung, the man cried out, Alas, that I took this road, for had I gone by any other way, then I had not met with Mung. And Mung said, Had it been possible for thee to go by any other way, then had the scheme of things been otherwise, and the gods had been other gods. When Mana Yud Sashai forgets to rest and makes again new gods, it may be that they will send thee again into the worlds, and then thou mayest choose some other way, and not meet with Mung. Then Mung made the sign of Mung, and the life of that man went forth with yesterday's regrets and all old sorrows and forgotten things, whither Mung knoweth. And Mung went onward with his work to sunder life from flesh. And Mung came upon a man who became stricken with sorrow when he saw the shadow of Mung. But Mung said, When at the side of Mung thy life shall float away, there will also disappear thy sorrow at forsaking it. But the man cried out, O Mung, tarry for a little, and make not the sign of Mung against me now, for I have a family upon the earth with whom sorrow will remain, though mine should disappear because of the sign of Mung. And Mung said, With the gods it is always now. And before Sish hath banished many of the years, the sorrows of thy family for thee shall go the way of thine. And the man beheld Mung making the sign of Mung before his eyes, which beheld things no more. Yeah, no, I like Mung. Yeah, he'll maybe make some comebacks here, some Mung backs. Hmm. Who's your favorite god of Pagana? Is it Manayu Sashai? Is it Kib? Is it Sish? Is it Mung? Let me know in the comments. Please like and subscribe. Nah, I'm not serious. Let's move on. Oh yes, to the chant of the priests. This is the chant of the priests, the chant of the priests of Mung. This is the chant of the priests. All day long to Mung cry out the priests of Mung, and yet Mung hearkeneth not. A bit like Crom, actually. Ooh, Scarl, the drummer. Yes, good call in the chat for a favorite god. Small god, I believe he is. Anyway, all right. Gotta beat that drum, otherwise everything will be undone. All right. All day long to Mung cry out the priests of Mung, and yet Mung hearkeneth not. What, then, shall avail the prayers of all the people? Rather bring gifts to the priests. Gift to the priests of Mung. So shall they cry louder unto Mung than ever was their wont. And it may be that Mung shall hear. Not any longer then shall fall the shadow of Mung athwart the hopes of the people. Not any longer then shall the tread of Mung darken the dreams of the people. Not any longer shall the lives of the people be loosened because of Mung. Bring ye gifts to the priests, gifts to the priests of Mung. This is the chant of the priests, the chant of the priests of Mung. This is the chant of the priests. Pretty good chant. Give a shit. Give a shit and something good might happen. Maybe death will go away. Ha 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 ha. Yes, just give us some more gifts. 1 year we'll find out how many gifts we need to make death go away, to make Mung fuck off. All right. Well then, moving on. The sayings of Limpang Tung. Tung. The god of mirth and of melodious minstrels. And Limpang Tung said, The ways of the gods are strange. The flower groweth up, and the flower fadeth away. This may be very clever of the gods. Man groweth from his infancy, and a while he dieth. This may be very clever too. But the gods play with a strange scheme. I will send jests into the world and a little mirth, And while death seems to be as far away as the purple rim of hills, or sorrow as far off as rain in the blue days of summer, then pray to Limpang Tung. But when thou growest old, or ere thou diest, pray not of Limpang Tung, for thou becomest part of a scheme that he doth not understand. Go out into the starry night, and Limpang Tung will dance with thee, who danced since the gods were young, the god of mirth and of melodious minstrels. Or offer up a jest to Limpang Tung. Only pray not in thy sorrow to Limpang Tung, for he saith of sorrow, it may be very clever of the gods, but he doth not understand. And Limpang Tung said, I am lesser than the gods. Pray therefore to the small gods, and not to Limpang Tung. Nay, whoa, pardon me, burp, burp, burp. This burp is sponsored by Henderson's. Pardon me, where were we? Yes. Natheless, between Pegana and the earth flutter 10,000 prayers that beat their wings against the face of death, and never for one of them hath the hand of the striker been stayed, nor yet have tarried the feet of the relentless one. Utter thy prayer, it may accomplish where failed 10,000. Limpang Tung is lesser than the gods, and doth not understand. And Limpang Tung said, lest men grow weary down on the great world through gazing always at a changeless sky, I will paint my pictures in the sky, and I will paint them twice in every day for so long as days shall be. Once as the day ariseth out of the homes of dawn, will I paint the blue, that men may see and rejoice. And ere day falleth under into the night, will I paint upon the blue again, lest men be sad. It is a little, said Limpang Tung. It is a little even for a god to give some pleasure to men upon the worlds. And Limpang Tung hath sworn that the pictures that he paints shall never be the same for so long as the days shall be. And this he hath sworn by the oath of the gods of Pegana, that the gods may never break, laying his hand upon the shoulder of each of the gods, and swearing by the light behind their eyes. Limpang Tung hath lured a melody out of the stream, and stolen its anthem from the forest. For him the wind hath cried in lonely places, and the ocean sung its dirges. There is music for Limpang Tung in the sounds of the moving of grass, and in the voices of the people that lament, or in the cry of them that rejoice. In an inner mountain land where none hath come, he hath carved his organ pipes out of the mountains. And there, when the winds, his servants, come in from all the world, he maketh the melody of Limpang Tung. But the song arising at night goeth forth like a river, winding through all the world, and here and there amid the peoples of earth one heareth, and straightway all that hath voice to sing crieth aloud in music to his soul. Or sometimes walking through the dusk with steps unheard by men, in a form unseen by the people, Limpang Tung goeth abroad, and standing behind the minstrels in cities of song, waveth his hands above them to and fro. He puts his hands in the air like he just don't care. And the minstrels bend to their work, and the voice of the music ariseth, and mirth and melody abound in that city of song, and no one seeth Limpang Tung as he standeth behind the minstrels. But through the mists towards morning, in the dark, when the minstrels sleep and mirth and melody have sunk to rest, Limpang Tung goeth back again to his mountain land. Can you see him? Can you see Limpang Tung behind me, waving his hands? All right. I don't know if I'll finish this tonight. In fact, I'm increasingly thinking I'll do this in two parts, but let's keep going. New section. Of Yoharnath Lahai, the god of little dreams and fancies. Yoharnath Lahai, or Yoharnath as it's spelled in this part. Jesus, I think this guy literally just typed up from a copy he had. Pardon me. Anyway, Yoharnath Lahai is the god of little dreams and fancies. All night he sendeth little dreams out of Pegana to please the people of earth. He sendeth little dreams to the poor man and to the king. He is so busy to send his dreams to all before the night he endeth be ended, that oft he forgetteth which be the poor man and which be the king. Whoops. To whom Yoharnath Lahai cometh not with little dreams and sleep, he must endure all night the laughter of the gods, with highest mockery in Pegana. All night long Yoharnath Lahai giveth peace to cities until the dawn hour and the departing of Yoharnath Lahai, when it is time for the gods to play with men again. Whether the dreams and the fancies of Yoharnath Lahai be false, and the things that are done in the day be real, or the things that are done in the day be false, and the dreams and the fancies of your heart on high be true, none knoweth, saving only Mana you to shy, who hath not spoken. All right. Next part. That's a fun little fella. Here we go. Of Rune, the god of going, and the thousand home gods. Rune said, there be gods of moving and gods of standing still, but I am the god of going. It is because of Rune that the worlds are never still, for the moons and the worlds and the comet are stirred by the spirit of Rune, which saith, go, go, go. Rune met the worlds all in the morning of things, before there was light upon Pegana, and Rune danced before them in the void, since when they are never still, Rune sendeth all streams to the sea, and all the rivers to the soul of Slid. Remember him. Rune maketh the sign of Rune before the waters, and lo, they have left the hills, and Rune hath spoken in the ear of the north wind, that he may be still no more. The footfall of Rune hath been heard at evening outside the houses of men, and thenceforth comfort and abiding know them no more. Before them stretcheth travel over all the lands, long miles, and never resting between their homes and their graves, and all at the bidding of Rune. The mountains have set no limit against Rune, nor all the seas a boundary. Whither Rune hath desired, there must Rune's people go, and the worlds and their streams and the winds. I heard the whisper of Rune at evening, saying, there are islands of spices to the south, and the voice of Rune saying, go. And Rune said, there are 1,000 home gods, little gods that sit before the hearth and mind the fire. There is one Rune. Rune saith in a whisper when none heareth, when the sun is low, what doeth Mana use to shy? Rune is no god that thou mayest worship by thy hearth, nor will he be benignant to thy home. Offer to Rune thy toiling and thy speed, whose incense is the smoke of the campfire to the south, whose song is the sound of going, whose temples stand beyond the farthest hills in his lands behind the east. Yarnareth, 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 which signifieth beyond. These words be carved in letters of gold upon the arch of the great portal of the Temple of Rune that men have builded looking towards the east upon the sea, where Rune is carved as a giant trumpeter with his trumpet pointing towards the east beyond the seas. Whoso heareth his voice, the voice of Rune at evening, he at once forsaketh the home gods that sit beside the hearth. These be the gods of the hearth. Pitsu, who stroketh the cat. Now, ask yourself, who stroketh the cat? It's Pitsu. Hobbith, who calms the dog. And Habaniah, the lord of glowing embers, and little Zumbibo. Zumbibo. Oh, God. Zumbibo. There we go. Zumbiboo. Zumbibo. Little Zumbibo, the lord of dust. And old Gribbon, who sits in the heart of the fire to turn the wood to ash. All these be home gods, and live not in Pegana, and be lesser than Rune. There is also Kilulugung, and the lord of a rising smoke, who taketh the smoke from the hearth and send it to the sky, who is pleased if it reacheth Pegana, so that the gods of Pegana, speaking to the gods, say, there is Kilulugung doing that work on earth of Kilulugung. I wonder if someone's pointing at me right now. There's Oliver, doing the work of Oliver. Anyway. All these are gods so small that they be lesser than men, but pleasant gods to have beside the hearth, and often men have prayed to Kilulugung, saying, thou whose smoke ascendeth to Pegana, send up with it our prayers, that the gods may hear. And Kilulugung, who is pleased that men should pray, stretches himself up all grey and lean with his arms above his head, and sendeth his servant the smoke to seek Pegana, that the gods of Pegana may know that the people pray. And Jabim is the lord of broken things, who sitteth behind the house to lament the things that are cast away. And there he sitteth lamenting the broken things until the worlds be ended, or till someone cometh to mend the broken things, or sometimes he sitteth by the river's edge to lament the forgotten things that drift upon it. A kindly god is Jabim, whose heart is sore if anything be lost. There is also Tribugi or Tribugi. Make of that what you will. There is also Tribugi, the Lord of Dusk, whose children are the shadows, who sitteth in a corner far off from Habaniah, and speaketh to none. But after Habaniah hath gone to sleep, and old Gribon hath blinked 100 times, until he forgetteth which be wood or ash. Then doth Trabugi send his children to run about the room and dance upon the walls, but never disturb the silence. But when there is light again upon the worlds, and dawn comes dancing down the highway from Pagana, then does Trabugi retire into his corner with his children all around him as though they had never danced about the room. And the slaves of Habaniah and old Grabon come and awake them from their sleep upon the hearth. And Pitsu strokes the cat, and Hobbith comes the dog. And Kalugang stretches aloft his arms towards Pagana, and Trabugi is very still, and his children asleep. And when it is dark, all in the hour of Trabugi, Hish creepeth from the forest. The Lord of Silence. Ironic when you can hear cop cars going by, probably. Yes, I live in a downtown area. Anyway, and I burp. Thanks to Hedris's Best. Where were we? And when it is dark, all in the hour of Trabugi, Hish creepeth from the forest. The Lord of Silence, whose children are the bats, they have broken the command of their father, but in a voice that is ever so low. Hish hasteth. Hasteth? Hasheth, I think that means. Hish hasheth the mouths, and all the whispers in the night. He maketh all noises still. Only the cribbit, wow, only the cricket rebelleth. But Hish hath set against him such a spell that after he hath cried 1,000 times, his voice may be heard no more, but becometh part of the silence. And when he hath slain all sounds, Hish boweth low to the ground, then cometh into the house with never a sound of feet. The god Yoharneth Lahai. But away in the forest, whence Hish hath come, Wahoon, the lord of noises in the night, awaketh in his lair, and creepeth round the forest to see whether it may be true that Hish hath gone. Then in some glade, Wahoon lifts up his voice and cries aloud that all the night may hear that it is he, Wahoon, who is abroad in all the forest, and the wolf and the fox, and the owl and the great beasts and the small lift up their voices to acclaim Wahoon, and there arise the sounds of voices and the stirring of leaves. Okay. I think we're gonna get to exactly halfway tonight, and then I think I'll pause and we'll read the other half another night. We're almost at 50 of 106 pages, so we'll go to 53 or whatever makes most sense with the chapter break. This is fun, but if I want to do a real good reading voice, it takes a lot out of me. Okay, new section: the revolt of the home gods. Oh shit. There may be 3 broad rivers of the plain, born before memory or fable, whose mothers are 3 gray peaks, and whose father was the storm. Their names be Imes, Zanes, and Sagastrian. And Imes is the joy of lowing herds. And Zanes hath bowed his neck to the yoke of man, and carries the timber from the forest from far up below the mountain. And Sagastrian sings old songs to shepherd boy, singing of his childhood in a long ravine, and of how he once sprang down the mountainsides and far away into the plain to see the world, and of how one day at last he will find the sea. These be the rivers of the plain, wherein the plain rejoices, but old men tell, whose fathers heard it from the ancients, how once the lords of the 3 rivers of the plain rebelled against the law of the worlds, and passed beyond their boundaries, and joined together and whelmed cities and slew men, saying, We now play the game of the gods, and slay men for our pleasure, and we be greater than the gods of Pegana. And all the plain was flooded to the hills. And Imes, Zanes, and Sagastrian sat upon the mountains, and spread their hands over their rivers that rebelled by their command. But the prayer of men going upward found Pegana, and cried in the ear of the gods, There be 3 home gods who slay us for their pleasure, and say that they be mightier than Pegana's gods, and play their game with men. Then were all the gods of Pegana very wroth. But they could not whelm the lords of the 3 rivers, because being home gods, though small, they were immortal. And still the home gods spread their hands across the rivers, with their fingers wide apart, and the waters rose and rose, and the voice of their torrent grew louder, crying, Are we not Imes, Zanes, and Sagastrian? Then Mung went down into a waste of Afrik, and came upon the drought Umbul, as he sat in the desert upon iron rocks, clawing with miserly grasp at the bones of men, and breathing hot. And Mung stood before him as his dry sides heaved, and ever as they sank, his hot breath blasted dry sticks and stones. Then Mung said, Friend of Mung, go thou and grin before the faces of Ime, Zanies, and Sagastri until they see whether it is wise to rebel against the gods of Pegana. And Umbul answered, I am the beast among. And Umbul came and crouched upon a hill upon the other side of the waters and grinned across them at the rebellious home gods. And whenever Ime, Zanies, and Sagastrian stretched out their hands over their rivers, they saw before their faces the grinning of Umbul. And because the grinning was like death in a hot and hideous land, therefore they turned away and spread their hands no more over their rivers, and the waters sank and sank. But when Umbul had grinned for 30 days, the waters fell back into the riverbeds, and the lords of the rivers slunk away back again to their homes. Still, Umbul sat and grinned. Then Ime sought to hide himself in a great pool beneath the rock, and Zanies crept into the middle of a wood, and Sagastrian lay and panted on the sand. Still, Umbul sat and grinned. And Imes grew lean and was forgotten, so that the men of the plain would say, "Here once was Imes." And Zanies scarce had strength to pardon me, my God. Zanies scarce had strength to lead his river to the sea. And as Sagastrian lay and panted, a man stepped over his stream, and Sagastrian said, It is the foot of a man that has passed across my neck, and I have sought to be greater than the gods of Pegana. Then said the gods of Pegana, It is enough. We are the gods of Pegana, and none are equal. Then Mung sent Umbul back to his waste in Afrique to breathe again upon the rocks and parch the desert, and to sear the memory of Afrique into the brains of all who ever bring bones away. And Imes, Zanies, and Sagastrian sang again and walked once more in their accustomed haunts and played the game of life and death with fishes and frogs, but never essayed to play it any more with men, as do the gods of Pegana. Well, 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 well. Pardon me, wow. All right, on to a new section. Um, yeah, okay. We can do a little more. We can do a little more for tonight. Of Dora's hand, whose eyes regard the end. Sitting above the lives of the people and looking doth Dorazand see that which is to be. The god of destiny is Dora's hand, upon whom hath looketh the eyes of Dora's hand. He goeth forward to an end that naught may stay. He becometh the arrow from the bow of Dora's hand, hurled forward at a mark he may not see, to the goal of Dora's hand. Beyond the thinking of men, beyond the sight of all the other gods, regard the eyes of Dora's hand. He hath chosen his slaves, and them doth the destiny god drive onward where he will, who knowing not whither, nor even knowing why, feel only his scourge behind them, or hear his cry before. There is something that Dorazand would fain achieve, and therefore hath he set the people striving, with none to cease or rest in all the worlds. But the gods, it sounds a bit like Rune, he gets people going, but I guess in this case it's fate. Anyway. But the gods of Pegana, speaking to the gods, say, What is it that Dora's hand would fain achieve? It hath been written and said that not only the destinies of men are the care of Dorazand, but that even the gods of Pegana be not unconcerned by this will. All the gods of Pegana have felt a fear, for they have seen a look in the eyes of Dora's hand that regardeth beyond the gods. The reason and the purpose of the worlds is that there should be life upon the worlds, and life is the instrument of Dorazand, wherewith he would achieve his end. Therefore the worlds go on, and the rivers run to the sea, and life ariseth and flieth even in all the worlds, and the gods of Pegana do the work of the gods, and all for Dora's end. But when the end of Dora's end hath been achieved, there will be there will be need no longer of life upon the worlds, nor any more a game for the small gods to play. Then will Kib tiptoe gently across Pegana to the resting place in highest Pegana of Mana Yud Sushai, and touching reverently his hand, the hand that wrought the gods, say, Mana Yud Sushai, thou hast rested long. And Mana Yud Sushai shall say, Not so, for I have rested but 50 eons of the gods, each of them scarce more than 10,000,000 mortal years of the worlds that ye have made. And then shall the gods be afraid when they find that Mana knoweth that they have made worlds while he rested. And they shall answer, Nay, but the worlds came all of themselves. Then Mana Yud Shasai, as one who would have done with an irksome matter, will lightly wave his hand, the hand that wrought the gods, and there shall be and there shall be gods no more. When there shall be 3 moons towards the north above the star of the abiding, 3 moons that neither wax nor wane, but regard towards the north, or when the comet ceaseth. Wow, that's a hard word to say. Or when the comet ceaseth from his seeking and stands still, not any longer moving among the worlds, but tarrying as one who rests after the end of search, then shall arise from resting, because it is of the end, the greater one, who rested of old time, even Mana used to shine. Then shall the times that were be times no more. And it may be that the old dead days shall return from beyond the rim, and we who have wept for them shall see those days again. As one who, returning from long travel to his home, comes suddenly on, dear, remembered things. For none shall know a Mana who hath rested for so long, whether he be a harsh or merciful God. It may be that he shall have mercy, and that these things shall be. All right, I checked the page count. We have two little pieces left, and then that's it for tonight. So, Mama's gonna finish his beer. All right. Whew. Now here's an evocative title. And you know what? I don't think we're gonna make it to my favorite section. So that's just as well. My favorite section. Well, which is it? We'll find out in part two. But first, let's finish part one. Okay. The Eye in the Waste. There lie 7 deserts beyond Bodrahan, which is the city of the caravan's end. None goeth beyond. In the first desert lies the tracks of mighty travellers outward from Bodrahan, and some returning. And in the second lie only outward tracks, and none return. The third is a desert untrodden by the feet of men. The fourth is the desert of sand. And the fifth is the desert of dust. And the sixth is the desert of stones. And the seventh is the desert of deserts. In the midst of the last of the deserts that lie beyond Bodrahan, in the centre of the desert of the deserts, standeth the image that hath been hewn of old out of the living hill whose name is Ranarada, the Eye in the Waste. About the base of Ranarada is carved in mystic letters that are vaster than the beds of streams these words: to the God who knows. Now, beyond the second desert are no tracks, and there is no water in all the 7 deserts that lie beyond Bodrahan. Therefore came no man thither to hew that statue from the living hills, and Ranarada was wrought by the hands of gods. Men tell in Bodrahan, where the caravans end and all the drivers of the camels rest, how once the gods hewed Ranahadra from the living hill, hammering all night long beyond the deserts. Moreover, they say that Ranahadra is carved in the likeness of the god Hudrasai, who hath found the secret of Mana Yu Shashai, and knoweth the wherefore of the making of the gods. They say that Hudrasai stands all alone in Pegana and speaks to none because he knows what is hidden from the gods. Therefore the gods have made his image in a lonely land as one who thinks and is silent, the eye in the waste. They say that Hudrasai has heard the murmurs of Mana Yu Shashai as he muttered to himself and gleaned the meaning and knew, and that he was the god of mirth and of abundant joy, but became from the moment of his knowing a mirthless god, even as his image, which regards the deserts beyond the track of man. But the camel drivers, they sit and listen to the tales of the old men in the marketplace of Bodrahan at evening, while the camels rest, say, if Hudra Sahai is so very wise and yet is sad, let us drink wine and banish wisdom to the wastes that lie beyond Bodrahan. Therefore is there wow, sorry. Therefore is there feasting and laughter all night long in the city where the caravans end. All this the camel drivers tell when the caravans come in from Bodrahan. But who shall credit tales that camel drivers have heard from aged men in so remote a city? All right. And with that, we were on page 53 of I want to say 106, and I do because it is. So I think we'll call that a break for this evening. I think tomorrow, Sunday, June 2nd, 2024. Yeah, 7 p.m. tomorrow night. I will read the back half of Lord Dunsany's Gods of Pegana and read the sort of outro kind of introduction type text that follows it in this lovely Beyond the Fields We Know, which is actually quite interesting. I read it and learned a few things I will share with you tomorrow. And if you want to catch that, subscribe to me on YouTube or Blue Sky, which is definitely like the Twitter replacement. That's where I'm at these days. Or I don't know, be cool and just follow the sound of my voice. Anyway, myself and Mana Yu Sashai wish you a pleasant night's rest and many dreams, and may Mung not find you on this fair evening.